After years of emotional abuse, I faked amnesia following an accident. I listened to and recorded their entire plan to steal my assets and handed it all over to the police. My name is Qley, and until a few months ago, I was living what looked like a perfect life from the outside. I'm a successful interior designer with a thriving business that was originally a small, beloved firm my late grandfather Arthur had built from the ground up. He passed away a couple of years ago, and in his will, he left me everything: the company, a significant financial trust, and his beautiful, sprawling Victorian home. It was a testament to the bond we shared and his belief in my ability to carry on his legacy. But inheriting all that didn't just come with a brand new life. It came with a shadow. My parents, David and Evelyn, and my older brother James, saw my fortune not as a gift to me, but as a resource for them to exploit. For as long as I can remember, my life has been a series of demands, veiled threats, and emotional manipulation. It started small, with loans that were never repaid, and grew into a full-fledged financial shakedown. They had always lived far beyond their means. My dad, David, was a shrewd businessman in his own right, but he was reckless and addicted to high-stakes investments. My mom, Evelyn, had an insatiable appetite for luxury, constantly buying designer clothes, expensive art, and planning lavish, unnecessary vacations. James, my brother, was the worst of the three. He was a chronic gambler, a loose cannon who would cycle between charming pleas for money and aggressive, sometimes violent outbursts when I refused. After Grandpa Arthur's death, their sense of entitlement became a torrent. The inheritance, which was meant to secure my future, became their personal piggy bank. Every week was a new crisis. My dad needed a bailout for a failed venture, my mom wanted to redecorate their already opulent home, and James had another can't-miss tip that required thousands of dollars. The company, the house, the trust, they saw it all as theirs, a family fund they had a right to, and I was just the unfortunate gatekeeper. I tried to stand my ground, but the pressure was relentless. They used every psychological trick in the book. Evelyn would cry and tell me I was breaking her heart by being so selfish. David would use his booming, authoritative voice to remind me of my familial duty. And James would get in my face, his breath hot with anger, threatening to cut me out of the family for good if I didn't comply. It was a slow, agonizing suffocation. The breaking point came one rainy Tuesday afternoon. I had just gotten home from a particularly stressful day at the office when James was there waiting for me. He was in a rage, having lost a significant amount of money on a long-shot bet. He cornered me at the bottom of the grand oak staircase that Grandpa Arthur had so lovingly restored. "I need 50 grand, Qley," he snarled, his eyes wild. "Now. I'm not asking. I'm telling you." I was exhausted, my patience completely gone. "I don't have it, James," I said, trying to push past him. "I'm not bailing you out again. The company needs that money for payroll." That's when he lost it. He grabbed my arm, hard. "You think you're so smart, don't you? With your big house and your big company? It's all just a joke. That old man only gave it to you because he knew you were a doormat who'd give it all to us anyway." I pulled my arm away, feeling a flash of pure adrenaline and anger. "No, James," I shot back, my voice trembling with a fury I hadn't let myself feel in years. "He gave it to me because he knew you were all greedy, selfish leeches." The look on his face twisted from anger to a cold, frightening rage. He lunged at me, and in the struggle, I lost my footing on the polished wooden step. My arm flailed, my head hit the corner of the banister, and the world went black. I didn't fall far, just a few steps, but it was enough. I lay there, motionless, the sound of the rain outside mingling with James's panicked gasps. When I woke up, the pain was a dull throb in my head, but my mind was crystal clear. Lying there, looking up at the stained glass window at the top of the stairs, I had an epiphany. The constant control, the manipulation, the threats, it all had to stop. And in that moment of pain and clarity, a single, audacious plan formed in my mind. I would pretend to be a blank slate. I would fake amnesia. To truly understand the gravity of my decision, you need to understand the people I was dealing with. They weren't just a difficult family, they were a meticulously orchestrated machine of psychological and financial abuse. First, there was David, my father. He was the puppet master, the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. He wasn't a man who yelled often, but when he spoke, his words were laced with a cold, calculated authority that made you feel small and insignificant. He ran a small-time real estate development firm that was always on the verge of collapse, so he saw my grandfather's company as his last great asset, a final chance to build the empire he always felt he deserved. He was a master of the double bind. He would praise my good business sense one moment and then, in the next, subtly undermine my decisions, suggesting I was too young, too naive, or too emotional to handle such a large fortune. He was the one who initiated the family meeting to discuss the future of the company, which was just a polite way of saying, "Give us the keys." Then there was Evelyn, my mother. She was David's perfect accomplice, the emotional weapon. Where he used logic and authority, she used guilt and shame. She had perfected the art of the passive-aggressive jab. "Oh, Qley, I'm so glad you have all that money, but it's such a shame you're so busy you can't help your poor mother with the renovations. But I suppose we can't all have everything we want." She would constantly compare me to other, more generous children, making me feel selfish and ungrateful. My entire life, she had conditioned me to believe that my worth was tied to my willingness to sacrifice for my family. The very idea of holding on to my inheritance felt, to my conditioned mind, like a betrayal of my mother's love. And finally there was James, my brother. He was the brute force, the enforcer. His gambling addiction was a convenient excuse for his recklessness and his volatile temper. He was the one who would show up unannounced, demanding money with a look in his eyes that was both desperate and menacing. He saw my success as an affront to his own failures, a constant reminder of what he could have had if he hadn't gambled it all away. He was not subtle. His threats were direct, his aggression palpable, and he was the one who pushed me over the edge, quite literally. The moment I hit the floor, and the darkness took over, I wasn't just knocked out. It felt like a lifetime of their words, their expectations, and their abuse had finally culminated in a physical blow. But when I came to, I realized that the accident, while terrifying, had given me an opportunity. It was the reset button I had always needed but never had the courage to press. I would play their game, but I would be the one writing the rules. Now. The first thing I saw when my eyes fluttered open was James's terrified face, quickly replaced by David's and Evelyn's. The ambulance sirens were wailing in the distance. I blinked, a blank expression on my face. "Where am I?" I whispered, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. The doctor in the emergency room explained I had suffered a minor concussion but was otherwise fine. My family, however, was already in full performance mode. David, with a fatherly hand on my shoulder, said, "You're in the hospital, sweetheart. You took a nasty fall." Evelyn was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. James was silent, looking nervously at his phone. I played my part, asking simple, innocent questions. "Who are you all?" I asked, my voice full of a childlike confusion. The doctor, a kind-faced woman with a clipboard, was skeptical but couldn't disprove it. She called it post-traumatic amnesia, a rare but possible side effect of a head injury. I was prescribed rest and told to take it easy. Back at the house, my family's concern turned to thinly veiled relief. My amnesia, they believed, was a blessing in disguise. David explained the company to me as if I were a child, saying he would handle everything for me until I got my memory back. Evelyn gushed about how she would help me manage my finances, suggesting we transfer my accounts to a joint one for easier access. James, emboldened, talked about how he would take care of the house, which I knew meant turning it into his personal party pad. They were so confident in their new control that they didn't even notice the small, seemingly random questions I would ask about Grandpa Arthur's legacy, my company, and the details of my trust. This was the part of my plan I'd been waiting for. Over the next few weeks, I feigned a gradual recovery, claiming to remember bits and pieces of my life but conveniently forgetting anything that seemed suspicious to them. My family, in their greed, grew bolder. They had to talk about their plans, and I needed to listen. One afternoon, while they were all out, I quietly took a cab to an electronics store on the other side of town. I bought a set of miniature, high-quality voice-activated recorders. They were the size of a thumb drive, perfect for hiding. Over the next few days, I hid them in strategic locations around the house. In the silk flowers in the living room, tucked into the spines of books in the library where they had their meetings, and inside the light fixture in the kitchen. I then used my supposedly shaky memory as an excuse to get them to talk. "Mom," I asked one morning at breakfast, "what did Grandpa Arthur do? You said he had a company, right?" Evelyn's eyes lit up. "Oh, he was a genius! He built it all from scratch." "But don't you worry your little head, sweetie. Your father is taking care of it all now." I would get them to elaborate, asking about the details of the business, the history of the house, and the family legacy. They would excitedly fill in the blanks, unknowingly creating a perfect narrative of their own greed for me to record. The real breakthrough came one evening after I'd gone to bed. I had hidden a recorder in a hollowed-out book on a shelf in the library. I crept downstairs and, with my heart pounding in my chest, retrieved it. I sat in my room, headphones on, listening to the muffled sounds of my family's meeting. At first, it was just the usual talk about company assets and market values. But then, the tone shifted. David, the lawyer says we need to be careful with the transfer of the company shares. We can't just forge a signature. It's too risky. Evelyn, oh David, stop being so paranoid. She doesn't remember a thing. We'll just say she signed them in a confused state. She trusts us. We're her family. James, speaking of signatures, what about the house? She just told me she's not a fan of the Victorian style. Maybe we should sell it and split the profits. It's a gold mine. David, no, we're not selling the house yet. It's an easier asset to transfer. We'll get her to sign a quitclaim deed. We've got Liam working on the paperwork for us. My blood ran cold. The word Liam echoed in my ears. I knew who he was. The family's lawyer. A man I had considered a mentor and a friend. The man I had confided in about my family's abuses. My mind was reeling. The recording went on, and I heard the most chilling words of all. They weren't just planning to steal my company and finances. They were also planning to forge documents to take away my home. My entire life was a pawn in their game, and they were so confident in my amnesia that they were detailing the entire plot for a device I had placed in their midst. I felt a surge of cold, righteous fury. My pain was real, but my resolve was forged in that moment. Listening to the recording, a flood of memories came rushing back, not of the abuse, but of a time before the abuse escalated. I remembered the day my grandfather, Arthur, sat me down in his study, the same study where my parents were now plotting their betrayal. I was 25, just starting out in my career. He was holding my hand, his skin papery and warm. Qley, he said, his voice soft but firm, I've watched you grow into an intelligent, hardworking young woman. You have a good heart. And you have the integrity this family seems to have lost. He then explained his decision. I'm leaving everything to you. Not to your parents, not to James. They will not be happy, but they have proven themselves incapable of stewardship. David is too impulsive. Evelyn too materialistic. And James, well, you know James. He'll squander it all on a whim. He looked me in the eye. I know this will be a burden. They will try to take advantage of you. They will try to manipulate you. They will try to convince you that this is, quote, family money, and that you owe them. Don't believe a word of it, my dear. This is yours. This is a chance for you to build something on your own terms. Without their influence, you've earned it. He was a prophet. I remembered the fallout from the will reading. My parents and James had been furious, their faces contorted with rage. How could he do this to us? Evelyn had sobbed. David had launched into a tirade about how I was too immature to handle such a responsibility. James had been the most aggressive, threatening to sue me and have me declared an unfit beneficiary. But a few weeks later, their attitude had shifted dramatically. They had become overly sweet and accommodating. Evelyn would call me every day to check in. David would offer me fatherly advice on running the company. James, who I had previously only seen during his gambling binges, started showing up with gifts and a saccharine smile, telling me how proud he was of me. I, naive and desperate for a loving family, had fallen for it. I thought they had changed, that the inheritance had brought us closer. The recordings, however, revealed the cold truth. Their kindness was just a cover, a strategy to get close enough to steal everything. The first recording was just the beginning. Over the next week, I retrieved 2 more. The second one confirmed my worst suspicions about Liam. It was another meeting in the library. This time Liam was on speakerphone. His voice, so familiar and reassuring, now sounded like a viper's hiss. Liam, David, the paperwork for the deed is ready. I've made sure the language is airtight. It looks like a simple transfer of assets, nothing a judge would question. It's just a matter of getting Qley's signature. James, that'll be easy. She thinks you're her best friend, Liam. She'll sign anything you put in front of her. Liam laughed. It was a cold, calculating sound. Just make sure she's alone. We don't want any memory coming back in the middle of this. I felt a wave of nausea. This was the same man who had helped me with my grandfather's trust, the man who had comforted me after the reading of the will, the man who I had confided in about the pressure my family was putting on me. He wasn't a sympathetic ear. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing, an active accomplice in my family's plan to destroy me. The betrayal was so deep, so absolute, it felt like a physical blow to the chest. The third recording was the most damning of all. This was the recording of the conversation immediately after my accident. It was a chaotic mess of hushed voices and panic. Evelyn, oh my God, David! Is she dead? Did James just kill his own sister? David, calm down, Evelyn, she's breathing. James, you idiot, what did you do? James, I didn't mean to. She was pushing me, And she just fell. I didn't mean to push her that hard. David, you were fighting with her, weren't you? About money. We talked about this. You were supposed to be the charming one, the one who helps her manage the house. Evelyn, she hit her head so hard. What if she really doesn't remember anything? David, Evelyn, that's not the point. The point is, she's unconscious. We need to get our story straight. James, you're a fool. Just say she slipped. Then, a moment of silence, followed by David's voice, now calm and measured. Wait a minute. An idea. This might be a gift. What if she doesn't remember? What if the amnesia is real? Then we don't have to worry about her changing her mind anymore. We can present her with the documents and she'll sign them without question. It's a perfect plan. James, you didn't just create a disaster. You created an opportunity. I listened to that last part over and over again, the blood draining from my face. My accident wasn't an accident. James had pushed me. My parents, instead of being horrified, had seen my pain and vulnerability as a chance to finally seize what they wanted. I wasn't just a gatekeeper anymore. I was a target. My faked amnesia was the only thing standing between me and utter ruin. My plan to expose them went from a clever ruse to a desperate act of survival. The next few days were a blur of meticulous planning. I had enough information now. I had the recordings, I had the names, and I had the proof that my accident was no accident at all. The time for acting was over. It was time for action. I quietly called an old friend of my grandfather's, a brilliant lawyer named Mr. Harrison. I told him I needed an urgent, confidential meeting, and that I had something to show him that would shock him to his core. He agreed, and the next day I slipped out of the house under the pretense of wanting to walk around the neighborhood to see if it jogged my memory. In his office, I played the recordings for him. He sat there, a stoic and experienced man, and with each clip, the look on his face became one of pure, unadulterated shock. When the recordings were over, he just leaned back in his chair and sighed. Qley, he said, his voice quiet, I knew your family was difficult, but this is a different level entirely. This is a criminal conspiracy. We spent the next few hours outlining our strategy. Mr. Harrison advised me to stay in character, to not let on that I knew anything. He then made a call to the police requesting a meeting with a detective specializing in fraud and elder abuse, a perfect fit for my case. My family's plan was to take advantage of a person they believed was mentally incapacitated, and that fell directly under their jurisdiction. The next morning I returned home, playing my part with renewed vigor. I acted excited and a little confused. Mom, Dad, I said, my voice bright. I had the strangest feeling this morning. I feel like I need to sign some important papers. I think it has something to do with the company and the house. It's like a memory just popped into my head. Their eyes lit up like a pair of greedy children on Christmas morning. Oh, darling, Evelyn said, rushing to hug me. That's wonderful. We were just talking about that. We have some papers all ready for you to sign. A little something to help us manage things while you're still recovering. David, ever the strategist, chimed in. We'll have a little family meeting this afternoon. We'll go over everything and get it all sorted out. We'll even call Liam to be here for moral support. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. I excused myself, went to my room, and made a single, anonymous call to the police. I gave them the address and the time. Don't be late, I whispered into the phone. The whole family will be here. The atmosphere in the library that afternoon was thick with a palpable tension. My family and Liam were all gathered, looking smug and confident. David held a stack of legal documents. Evelyn was sipping tea with an air of sophisticated triumph. And James was pacing the room with a wide, manic grin on his face. Liam, the man who had betrayed my trust, sat calmly in a leather chair, his briefcase by his side. All right, Qley, David said, his voice all business. We're just going to go over these documents. These are all for the benefit of the family, of course. It's just a simple transfer of management to me and the house deed. Well, you'll feel so much better when we have that all handled. He pushed a pen toward me. Just sign here, and here, and here. It's all a formality. I took the pen, my hand steady. I looked at the first document, a transfer of company assets. I looked at the second, the deed to the house. I looked at their faces, their eyes glittering with avarice, completely oblivious to the trap they had walked into. I felt no rage, only a cold, powerful sense of control. Just as I was about to put the pen to the paper, the doorbell rang. James, annoyed, said, I'll get it. He came back a moment later, his face a mask of confusion. There are some police officers at the door. They say they need to speak to us. David's face paled. Evelyn dropped her teacup, the sound of porcelain shattering on the floor. A sharp punctuation in the silence. James's smug grin vanished, replaced by a look of pure terror. 2 uniformed officers and a plainclothes detective walked into the room. The detective, a woman with piercing gray eyes, looked at me, then at my family. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, Mr. James Hayes, and Mr. Liam Davies, we have a warrant for your arrest. My family looked at each other, their faces a mixture of confusion and panic. David, ever the leader, tried to bluster. What is this? This is a private family matter. We haven't done anything wrong. The detective ignored him. She turned her attention to me. Qley, are you a victim of fraud and assault? I stood up, the pen still in my hand. I walked over to the detective, my gaze never leaving my family's shocked faces. A cold, sardonic smile crept onto my face. I remember everything, I said, my voice clear and steady. I remember the day my grandfather gave me this inheritance, and I remember every single one of your greedy plots to steal it from me. I remember James pushing me down the stairs, and I remember you all celebrating my concussion as a gift. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small recorder. And I have it all on tape. The color drained from their faces as I handed the device to the detective. David looked at me, his face a mask of pure fury and disbelief. Evelyn was sobbing uncontrollably. James looked at the ground, his body trembling. Liam, the so-called trusted lawyer, just stared, his eyes wide with horror, as his entire career imploded before his very eyes. The detective looked at me, a flicker of something that looked like admiration in her eyes, and nodded. Take them away, she said to the officers. David, Evelyn, and James were arrested on charges of fraud, attempted theft, and conspiracy to commit assault. The recordings were an undeniable mountain of evidence. My new lawyer, Mr. Harrison, used them to secure a temporary restraining order, and my family was barred from all contact with me and from coming within 100 yards of the company and my home. Liam was also arrested, not just for his involvement with my family scheme, but also for his role in forging documents. His law license was immediately revoked, and he's now facing a long prison sentence. My amnesia was, in a strange way, the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to see the truth, to understand that the people who were supposed to love and protect me were nothing more than abusers and thieves. The pain of the physical injury was temporary, but the emotional scars of their betrayal will be a long time healing. The past few months have been about recovery. Not just from the concussion, but from a lifetime of manipulation. I have a new legal team, I've secured my company and my assets, and I've started the long process of rebuilding my life. I have reconnected with old friends, people who truly cared about me and who were pushed away by my family's incessant demands. It turns out that a true friend won't ask you to give them all of your money. I've made a promise to myself to live a life on my own terms, free from the manipulation and greed of those who claim to be my family. I am no longer a pawn in their game. I am a survivor, and I am the rightful heir to my grandfather's legacy. And for anyone out there who feels trapped in a cycle of abuse, whether it's emotional, financial, or otherwise, remember this. Sometimes, the most powerful tool you have is the truth, and sometimes, the best way to get it is to pretend you don't know it.